We find that the Romans owed the conquest of the world to no other cause than continual military training, exact observance of discipline in their camps, and unwearied cultivation of the other arts of war. That's a quote from a Roman writer, Vegetius.
Vegetarian.
Yes. And I read that piece out because today we're talking about the Romans. As I was walking around town the other day, a question sort of struck me. I was looking around and I was like, I couldn't see any Romans. We're walking around Tasmania and there were no Romans to be found. 2,000 years ago, they had a great empire. So what happened? Why was it the British that colonised Australia and not the Romans?
Is the answer slaves?
What do you mean?
I just, you sort of lose the need for some technological innovation, I guess, if you've just got a labour force.
Right. Oh, yeah.
What do you think of that?
I don't know.
This is a serious podcast. We're serious people.
But no, so I thought it'd be fun. Like it's very interesting. I think how people's change over time, and so I thought it would be fun to just sort of, track the Romans and find out why there is actually no Romans anymore. But there's a twist at the end. There are still Romans. Big reveal. They live in Rome.
So you're going to give me the reason as to why there isn't the famous Roman steam engine and the Roman railways.
Yes, and it's a long and winding story that I'll condense down into however long this video ends up being
after the edit.
And I will also endeavour to do next to no research for this. But so the first thing you've got to answer is, who were the Romans?
Italians that were conquered by Trojans, allegedly.
If I could borrow a line from not a friend of the show, Matt Walsh, what is a Roman? Like we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the Romulus and Remus story. So the city of Rome was founded, and from the very get-go, it was kind of like an immigrant city. So even from the start, it was kind of hard to nail down what a Roman is. People have said gone down ethnic lines, have gone down cultural lines, shared ideology, cult practices, religion, all that kind of stuff. But it's still kind of hard to narrow it down. But right from the start, it was an immigrant thing. Even some of the ancient and most august Roman families, like the Claudii, were from. They weren't Roman. They were from neighbouring tribes that sort of integrated into the Roman.
You kind of like, as far as like geological distance, are we arguing between like Tasmanians and Victorians?
Kind of.
It's kind of like the same kind of mess, but it's just...
Yeah, like they were all Latin-speaking people, but they weren't, in the sense of Roman being a city-state. So Rome and the farmland around it might be Romans, but then the people from that town over there are not Romans.
You got the Sabines, over here, and then on the other hand, you've got King Latinus of the Latins.
The brilliantly named King Latinus. The not at all suspiciously named King Latinus.
Definitely happened.
Well, you have to believe it. The Romans were people from Rome and surrounds, right? Basically, and cultural practices, all that kind of stuff. as they expanded, the first wave of expansion, you could say, was conquering the Latin people. So they sort of integrated pretty easily. But then as they kind of spread throughout Italy and conquered that, they set up this alliance system where the city-states and towns and things, they weren't Roman, but they were allies of Rome.
Yeah.
So, they were within the Roman system, but they weren't members of the Senate. And
not citizens.
Yeah. And surprise, surprise, that led to a big issue in a couple of centuries. It's called the Social War. Our good friend of the show, Marius, and Sulla, put that shit down. He squashed that revolt.
Right, not having any of this.
Because a big confederation
It was
of
Marius. He was. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was the populari at the time. Land reforms, and he was sort of like a soldier's man. And
I think at the time of the Social Wars, he was basically old man Marius. He was, about one step away from full-on dementia.
So is this? So Sulla's come in, said no, I'm going to go and fight Mithridate, and then left, and then Marius has come in. Is this at that point?
It's around the same time, because these wars was like, it wasn't like done in a month. They kind of dragged on for a little bit, but
Just drag it on.
the end point was that the Senate, or the Roman Senate, granted citizenship to all Italian allies. So Roman became all of Italy, basically. And then as the empire expanded, you had this idea, I guess, of where you could kind of be a dual citizen. Like you're a citizen of your local town, like of Athens or wherever, but then you're also a citizen of Rome.
Yeah.
I think it was in about 200 AD, after the empire had been around for a while. One of the emperors just granted citizenship to all freeborn males in the empire. And so it really hammered home this idea. You could be Egyptian and Roman, or you could be, from Britain and a Roman. So you had like this sort of like a local cultural identity, and then a political identity. It's quite...
It honestly kind of, and I'm forgetting the correct term for it, but it seems like a proto stateism kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not using the right term. But
they wouldn't have thought about it in the same way that we do. But
regionalism.
Yeah, it's kind of like how here in Tasmania, you might be, I'm a Tasmanian, but also you're Australian. Highly disputed down here, but...
Those fucking mainlanders.
Those imperialist mainlanders. That was sort of like the status quo for a while. And then, all these different peoples from all over the empire were admitted into the Senate, and it really was like a multicultural kind of setup. And then the East and the West split. And that ruined everything.
And before the Arab invasions ruined everything. It was ruined before that.
Yeah.
Before Constantinople fell, it was ruined before.
So in the East was massively rich and wealthy, because that's where all the big cities were, and ancient cities over there. And then
so we're talking like Greece,
the Middle East,
Turkey,
Egypt.
Egypt, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then over on the West, you had, modern day France, Spain, parts of Germany, Britain, Italy, but not as developed, not as wealthy.
How the tables have turned.
And I forgot what I was going to say. Well, I think I want to say, here's a quick message from our sponsor of this video.
Is money tight this time of year? Do you suffer from the effects of inflation? Do you have demons inside your soul and need to be squashed with poison? or iron pot, made from pure Tasmanian water, brewed traditionally.
Welcome back. So the the East and West, obviously the Western Empire eventually did drop off, and then the idea of being Roman in the West was gradually sort of replaced with the local identity. You know, because there was
There was such a movement of peoples after a while, and I know it gets compressed. Like, oh, this Germanic or barbarous group sort of moved in, and whatever. But it's just, I mean, it ceased being a state in the, I guess, that.
Yeah, there was still Roman authority and power for a couple of centuries after the fall.
Local council.
Yeah, or like the Senate carried on for a couple of centuries. A lot of the barbarian rulers would still acknowledge the emperor in the East as their emperor and their overlord. But eventually, bit by bit, as sort of Roman state authority disintegrated, the idea of being Roman was replaced with like these sort of local identities. And
I mean, it says a lot that throughout Europe, like the word king, as far as I know, is from the word Caesar.
yeah, in a lot of places,
and Tsar and Kaiser. So it's like they've gone. Rome, the state, but the imprint of like the name of the ruling figure has.
Yes, there was what's the right word? The cultural momentum carried on. But the state power was kind of gone, and in the West, being Roman shifted from like this political identity to it shifted more back to a regional or ethnic one. So in the West, people would refer to those that are from Rome as Romans.
So I hate sort of the term. Well, I don't, but it becomes more of a tribal, because in the sense that you've got your in-group, those that share the language, and then tradition. Everything becomes a little bit smaller before it expands again.
Yeah. And it's in those sort of in-groups, as you say, or those small units, that's where the seeds were of, these modern national identities that we have were laid. Nationalism is cool.
I like it.
In the West, being Roman died out, or the idea of being Roman, except in Rome, where they still called themselves Romans. In the East, however, totally different story.
Ooh.
The Roman Empire did not die in the East.
I'm just sorry, just sort of letting it. It's like, but they're actually Greeks.
Well, more on that later. There was in the East, they sort of carried on as normal. Obviously, they knew that a lot of the Western territory had fallen off, and been overrun by barbarians and this and that.
I hope I'm not skipping ahead here, but there were attempts. Like Justinian sent his, BFF, Belisarius. He tried to head back over, and
he did.
He was sort of successful, but then obviously he left, and then the barbarians sort of kept it barbarous.
He's successful. Depends on your perspective.
Oh.
Because remember how I said that after the fall of the West, a lot of the Roman infrastructure just remained in place. It was just the barbarian king was sort of, running the show. Like the Senate was still there. A lot of the bureaucracy and stuff still functioned, at least in large parts. That only really changed when Belisarius showed up and, repeated sort of conquests and reconquests of Rome, basically destroyed the city, and from which it never recovered. And Italy, so destroyed the city and Italy, and that it just never recovered from there. But that was one of the things that shifted in the West and the East when Justinian tried to reconquer the western half of the empire, which he did to it. So he reconquered most of Italy, North Africa, like around Carthage, and parts of Spain as well. The people in Rome still thought of themselves as Roman. And so they were like, if we're getting conquered by the Roman Empire, but we're already in the Roman Empire, like what does that mean? And then the people in the East were having the same thing. It's like, if that guy's the emperor and he's conquering Rome, but Rome's already in the empire, like what is he conquering?
You've completely annihilated my Belisarius has done nothing wrong.
So yeah, so that was a big shift for for a lot of people. But the East, they still thought of themselves as Roman. In the
Sorry, as did everyone else.
yeah. I don't know if it was in the sense of like we're ethnically Roman, or if we're Roman in the political sense. But
I think it's going to be both. It's going to be both because you're not going to have, just an example, like a distinct ethnicity. Like, you know, you can have many Chinese people walking around. You know, generally speaking, it's going to be quite homogenous.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's probably generally not something that you think of too much until you see it and go, that's different. It's going to be a cultural thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and the most you're going to have in contact with it is be like, we don't do that to someone. You know, it's like, what are you doing?
but there was trouble on the horizon in the form of a man on a horse with a sword called Muhammad.
I was going to say, you could go anywhere with this.
I don't know if he did wield a sword or if he did ride a horse or if he even existed. But
is this the same sword, to your knowledge, that split the moon?
Might have been. I always thought he telekinesis, like he was just like, I got it.
Makes more sense.
So the Arabs showed up and conquered, conquered the Middle East, Egypt, North Africa. Eventually made their way up through Spain, and
wasn't, and I'll forget. I'm a moron. The exact details, sort of lost me. But perhaps the success of the Arab invasion or the Arab expansion is due to the civil war that was not civil war, but the war that was happening between the Eastern Roman Empire, the Roman Empire at this point, and whatever the equivalent of, Persia and the Middle East. And they'd been at such a war of attrition for so long that by the time the Arabs eventually just kicked through, everyone's basically paper tiger.
Yeah, I think that's completely true. There was a long and difficult war between the Romans and the Persians, and lots of cities just swapping hands back and forth every couple of years. And
it was literally just backwards, and like you'll have a big push, take over this middle ground, and then push back again for generations.
Yeah, and there was a famous battle in sort of Turkey now near the border of Syria, where the Romans did push the Arabs back. Otherwise, they sort of would have just kept going. But yeah, that was a large part of it. And I suppose as a result of that, there was another big sort of Roman identity shift. Where Black Cat, oh no. So the empire had shrunk to Anatolia and Greece and the Balkans. So it's kind of modern day Turkey, Greece, and the parts of the Balkan area, and also Italy. And so the vast majority of the population of the empire were ethnically Greek.
Yeah.
And so whether consciously or subconsciously, the question was like what is it to be Rome? Like all the empire's gone. It's just us basically us Greeks left. What are we, kind of thing. It was to the extent people in the West, they would call it or refer to the Byzantine Empire as the Greek Empire or the Empire of the Greeks. They continued to call themselves the Roman Empire.
I mean, even to this, maybe not till today, I don't watch a huge amount of Russian telly, but I mean, it's like even the Orthodox Church, like Russia, still claims to be the continuation of the Roman Empire. You know, there's still that kind of legitimacy almost of, you know, like Europe doesn't necessarily, but there are still places in the world that still, I mean, even, all right, I don't know if this is true or not, right? But you know, the crescent moon you see in a lot of the Islamic symbolism and right. Apparently, the flag or the symbol for Constantinople, you know, the Eastern Roman Empire, that was the crescent moon was their iconography.
Right.
And when Constantinople fell, the Islamic Caliphate adopted that.
Yeah.
You know, so there is this long, like, legitimacy comes from
what came before.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they called themselves in Turkish, in the Turkish language, they called themselves the Empire of Rum, which is their word for Rome, and they would use I think they used for their sultans, they used a form of address that was basically Caesar. Yeah. So I mean,
it's like Kaisersar, you know, that kind of.
Yeah. I forget what the word is, but yeah. So this after the Arab conquest, this Roman Empire, that what was left of it, sort of transformed into this medieval Greek Empire that we would call the Byzantines, and they very much identified with like this sort of Christian type of empire rather than the empire of, you know, Augustus or Caesar. But they still called themselves Romans. And as the years sort of, you know, went on, there's actually a really great story going back to the fall of Constantinople. The last emperor.
There's no good stories about that. It was a tragedy. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to mankind.
So the last emperor, Constantine Palaiologos. I don't know.
I wasn't going to help you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for nothing. Before the you know, the Turks were at the walls. They brought this freaking massive gun to knock down the walls of Constantinople.
The biggest gun man has ever seen.
Yeah, and you know, people were they'd walk around the walls. The Greeks, they'd walk around with like a huge cross and stuff, and like singing their prayers and things, and you know, the fighting started, and it looked like it was clear as day that Constantinople was going to fall, and
they'd been knocked over by, was it the Fourth Crusade as well? So at this point, we're not talking about the same people or the same.
No, but they still
had been sacked before. And
they still called themselves Romans,
of course,
and they still thought of themselves as the Roman Empire. But so the city is about to fall, and you know, whoever goes up to Constantine and goes, you know, the city's done. We've got to get out of here. We can flee to wherever, and then you know, pick up the fight. And he's like, I forget exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, "No, if my city falls, I will fall too. Let's go get them, boys!" And he sort of charged off.
Boys.
And that was the last time anyone ever saw him, and his body was never recovered. And
so he was plucked from earth into heaven.
And there was a myth that persisted right up until modern times. Like the modern Greeks, when they were fighting their war of independence, believed this, that one day Constantine would return in blazing glory to reinstate the Roman Empire.
He hasn't done it yet.
No, still waiting for him. I'd love to see it.
Can you imagine?
Oh, it'd be so cool.
I hope. All right, so if this miraculous thing was to happen, right, I hope it's kind of sort of updated with the times, right? So I don't want to. I mean, I don't necessarily want to see him riding in on a drone, but at the same time, I don't want to. I don't want to see old mate sort of be like, cavalry, he's on the back of a horse charging into, well, a drone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it needs to be glorious.
Yes, I would love to see, preferably blazing in fire or something. But
With Lord Shiva behind him.
yeah. But the final split, or the final end, if you want to call it that, because right through even after the Turkish conquered continent, the ethnic Greeks still thought of themselves as Romans. It had become more of an ethnic term throughout the Middle Age and Byzantine period. That Greek and Roman were kind of the same thing, and that changed again, kind of at this war of independence leading up to that, where the Greeks called the Ottoman Turks, they were the Romans because they took on the Roman Empire, and the Greeks would refer to themselves as Hellenes, which is sort of much more identifying with Aristotle and Plato rather than Augustus and Cicero and stuff. And for them, the Hellene was like this, brave, strong freedom fighter.
Yeah.
And the Roman was a moronic slave who just did the Sultan's bidding.
Fucking Sultan, man. I have no time for the Sultan. I barely put up with it in the Disney Aladdin's movie.
Yeah.
He was just a lovable character. Be gone with you.
Great, yeah. But yeah, so that was after all those years, that was kind of the end of the the Romanness of the Roman Empire. There are still parts of Greece in local dialects and things. They still call their language and refer to themselves as Romanoi, which I think is pretty cool. And obviously, there's parts of the Balkans like Romania where they, call themselves the Romans.
I do kind of like that. If you were going to take the position that the Ottoman Empire is the most recent extension of the Eastern Roman Empire, that Englishman Lawrence of Arabia, T.L. Lawrence, crushed them.
Lawrence are Roman Slayer.
Yeah. So T.L. Lawrence just sort of snuffed out the last bit of the Roman Empire. With the exception of the Vatican, of course. But you know what I mean.
So maybe this whole episode was, to answer the question, why are there no Romans in Tasmania? And it's because they live in Rome.
Yeah.